I am preparing to do some Suminagashi today, and I thought I might as well share the materials I use. Nothing special. I'm not a professional of any kind, just kind of what I like to play with and what I use. So for paper, I like to experiment with a number of different things. These are previous sheets that I'm going to redo or do over. Like some of them, they're a little blurry. Sometimes I can go over it and get a better print. That's like kind of like a ghost print. Very pale. So ones that just didn't particularly thrill me, I might go over again. And then I have a few miscellaneous art papers. I think these were drawing papers that I tore down. I love old office supply papers. This is, like it says, a heavy construction paper. Not all of these will work because some of them have coating on them, which the ink just won't adhere. It just runs off and gets blurry. This is a 90-pound drawing paper. This is was resume paper. It's fairly heavy and it has a very subtle like linen texture. I don't think this works, but I'll try anyway. This is a typewriter paper. It's kind of nice texture. It's thin, but I'm afraid this might also have a coating on it. But we will see what happens with that. This is another sulfite paper. I think it might be 50 pound, just plain white paper. This came out of a stationery box. It's got one deckled edge and a crease in the middle. I think it was for maybe like wedding invitations. Miscellaneous old plain paper pad. And another stationery set. So, a number of different papers to try. And only a few of them will probably actually work. Now, as far as supplies, nothing too fancy. The only two things that I really purchased, well, I already had Sumi ink. I love to use Sumi ink. As far as I know, these are both the same brand. I've tried other inks and I just really haven't found they work well. I tried acrylic ink. I tried my own walnut ink. I tried a variety of things that really haven't worked too well. But I have tried these and they do work. They're very, very light. So they're very pale, but they do add some color. So I like to intermix those. I just use regular Dawn for my, I'm forgetting the word, but to mix in with my water. And my little homemade brush rests and calligraphy Sumi brushes. Medium size are great. And then I've got a couple of tools that I like to move around the water with. Get a skewer or a paper clip to draw it through, straw to blow things in directional, and then my favorite is just a little bit of a fan. And then I've got my tray of water. This was just a cheap dollar store storage thing, plastic thing, but it's perfect. So I filled it with about half an inch of water. And some of these inks are so light and they're so hard to see where you put in the water that I have drawn a circle in the bottom, so at least I can work in the same area without losing track of where I've already put some ink. And make sure the water is cool, still, and dust free. And I think that's it. So let's get started. Okay, I just warmed up with a couple papers to make sure I got everything set up right. Couple of things to note also is try not to rest your hands on your tray, because no matter how sturdy it is, likely you will rock it a little bit. I don't mind too much because I like to disturb my patterns a lot anyway, but if you're trying for a little more control, try not resting your hands on the tray or dish you're using. And also keep in mind any air currents in the room, doors opening, closing, breathing on it, your dog's tail wagging nearby. They will all stir the air and can alter your pattern. I don't mind, because it's all just serendipity and play anyway. So just something to keep in mind. This is my Sumi ink, a little bit of soap water. Just touch it to the very top of the water. I tend to like traditional circles and rings. I like it when they look like waves or tree rings. Now it looks like a shell pattern to me. So I'm trying first this business stationery. The hardest part is to set it in the tray gently and smoothly. And I don't like to center my patterns either. I like to go off. I don't know why, but I just like it when they're a little off center. I can see there's a tiny bubble in there, so I'll just press it to move it. And then if you have any scrap paper, you can pick up the edge pieces too. I like to do it with colored paper as well. Now once the ink is on there, it's on there. It's not really going to come off. So I can see a line in there, and there is a lot of ink, and you can see it's running slightly. So what I will do is bathe it a little bit and just wash off the extra ink. And now it's not blurry anymore, mostly. Those will be good collage pieces. I like that the way it is. Hardest part for me is laying it down smoothly so you don't get the whiskers running through it. See, now that is from not laying it down totally smooth. Yeah, it's running a little bit, so I'll give it a little wash. And if for any reason you don't really like your print, or it's not very impressive, let it dry, and then you can do a color or try it again on the same piece, double print. Now I'm going to add a little bit of color. This is red and orange. I don't like, these colors tend to be a little too bright for me, so I like to mix them a little bit, and I might even muddy it a little bit with some blue or Whoops. Why don't we do that? And this paper is from the just kind of random leftover pad of drawing paper I had like decades ago. Ooh, this is barely gonna fit. Beautiful color, but you can see how it's bleeding terribly. So I'm gonna have to rinse it. Yep, I think this has too much sizing on it. But again, don't get rid of it, save it, because I also find papers that have been wetted or dyed once are often receptive, more receptive the second time around. So I'll save it. There's nothing saying you have to start in the middle and do concentric circles. You can do however you want. Usually this ink works a little bit better. My brush might not be totally clean. When you wash your brushes, you have to be really sure that there's no soap residue left on your ink brushes, because that will really disrupt the surface tension. I made a mess of that one. Now this is that kind of invitation paper. It's got the fold in the middle of it. Kind of interesting. Oh yeah, that one's really smudging badly too. Oh. Fail on that one. This is, I think, like a 50-pound sulfite paper. It's got a nice tooth to it, so hopefully it'll grab the dye, the ink. Ooh, there's a little bit of bleed on there, but that really showed the color a lot. I like that. Yeah, it's a little blurry, but it's really holding the ink pretty well. Try it again. I added a drop of blue, but I think I might have muddied it too much, but we'll see. This is the sulfite paper again. Now let's see, which way do I want to pick it up? I like it. You know, I kind of like that the way it is. Oh, look at that. There's a little bit of drip, but now this is typewriter paper, and I'm not optimistic, but let's see. Yep, look at that. Blur, 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 blur. Now this is the textured resume paper. It's got like a linen finish on it. Again, I'm not optimistic that this will work. Nope. So no, I don't think I would use this one again. And you can see as I'm rinsing these off, the water's getting murkier and murkier, and that is totally fine until you start having trouble with your inks maybe dispersing too quickly, or it's sinking to the bottom, or they're just getting muddy, and then you can dump it out and start again. That's cool. Now I am trying this rag paper. It's got a nice texture. Hopefully it'll pull. Oh, wow. There's a tiny bit of bleed on there, but that's nice. You can see where I mixed my inks and on the brush. I like that. That's very nice contrast with this paper. I think my water is getting a little dirty. It's not really behaving properly. The ink is starting to leave trails, but I added a darker color, and you can see how half of my brush has got the blue and the other half of my brush has got the orange still on there. That is pretty cool. And I'm going to use this again. Which way should I go? Oh wow, now that's interesting. That was total chance with the way the inks were on the brush. All right, I'm gonna clean out my water tray, let it settle, maybe rinse my brushes to start clean, and I'll be back. All right, I've cleaned off my ink brushes and cleaned the water in my tray. We'll see if this improves things. And I changed my ink color. I mixed some red and blue, so we'll have a little bit of a purplish color. Let's see what it looks like. Blue. I've got too much ink. Sumi ink. Now the paper I am using is this construction paper. So even though it's old, I think the construction, it's just basically sulfite paper, and it has more tooth to it, seem to work the best. So let's see. Go this way. Yeah, that's nice. There's a little bit of runniness, but let's see. Yeah, that is nice. So it looks like sulfite paper, construction paper, is the best for holding ink. So now I'm going to try doing some repeats over these. Let's see how they turn out. Let's see. I think you can barely see the rings in there. Yeah, you can see that really faintly. That came out pretty nicely. I don't see it running too much, so double dye for the win. Oh, that turned out pretty nice, except for you can see where I kind of dropped the paper into the water, but I really like that. That's some great dimension. With these double dyed, I kind of like to leave the second pattern kind of simple, depending on, I don't know, which one should we do? Let's try this one. This was a ghost print. It was after a really messy, dark Sumi pattern, and there was still ink on top, so I lifted that. And these are just strips of tea-dyed papers that I'm using to pick up the extra there. So not bad. There's some movement happening there. And if you get air bubbles like that, poke at them until they move, or else you'll end up with a blank white spot. Oh, I like that. Really interesting. Okay, got one more. This is another, I don't think it was a ghost print, but I really kind of went crazy with it and don't like it. So let's see if I can improve it. Not really. I mean, looks better on camera than it does in my hands. We'll see what happens when it dries. Well, it wasn't until I was editing all the videos that I realized I did not do any sort of flip through or follow up at the end. And unfortunately, some of those papers are long gone. I cut some of them up for bundles for sale, but I thought I would go through some of the other types of papers I've also used and just kind of give you an idea of which ones work best, or even just kind of see what sort of cool stuff you can do. So these were some of the last pages I did that were double dipped. And this was the, I think, that cotton rag paper, which works great. It's very heavy, like almost like a thin watercolor paper. So that was definitely the best. Here's another one that worked well. I can't remember what paper this is, but I can feel the texture on it. And this was from not rinsing my brush. I was just mixing, adding drops of ink to the palette and just mixing them. And as the brush dispersed the ink, some of the other colors would come through and add those really neat, interesting bleeds and patterns. This is what happens when you get an air bubble. This feels like regular copy paper that I double dyed. These feel like maybe sulfite paper. This one's a little thicker, maybe 80 pound. And I know some artists really get good bright colors, and I really struggle with that. And I've tried a lot of different things, and I'm starting to wonder if it's my water. I'm on well water. Now these are a little brighter. These were subsequent attempts, and let me see. I tried alum on some, and I don't really have great success with alum. I will keep trying. I might not be doing a strong enough solution. I don't know what I did to get that, but that is like one of the clearest, brightest ones I've ever done, and I have no idea what I did. Figures. Good old-fashioned bullseye. That feels like my regular copy paper. Some of the best success I have is dyeing on my own dyed papers. After they've been tea dyed or otherwise dyed, it gives the paper a little bit of a tooth to it, and the inks really adhere to the paper. The paper really picks it up quite well. Let's see what else. These were more experiments. I was playing more with colors. This was double dyed on a grungy dyed paper, tea dyed. They really work nicely on the tea dyed. I like that. Let's see. Getting fancy with some patterns. This is this feels almost like a watercolor. This is very thick, but it's got to be probably that rag paper. Just plain graph paper that I printed. Playing with colors. See, now this should have been really bright and vibrant, and I just I have a hard time with those. This feels like an old office paper. It's kind of a interesting, thin, very thin paper. Now that's on tea paper again. It's beautiful. I can never duplicate a lot of these. And now these were giant coffee filters. I cut them, make them square. So this is just the curve of the filter. And sometimes they work pretty cool. Other times, not so much. But they do seem to pick up pretty well. And I imagine, well, actually, I know tea bag paper. You can also get some pretty cool results. These was obviously a used tea bag. It's the family size tea bags, or giant. But if you buy that, there's someone who sells clean sheets of tea bag paper, white. That would probably be amazing. Notebook paper. This was really slippery, kind of old, odd notebook paper, and I'm surprised that even picked up anything. Another thing that works really well is that drywall tape. It's not really tape, but it's kind of that rough, usually has a bit of a fold in it. This is very porous and picks up pretty well. This was a random piece of rice paper. Not terribly exciting. And old book pages often don't work because they're so glossy. So alum helps with that. And more book pages. Sometimes it picks up, sometimes they don't. You just got to experiment. This was just a calendar page. Worked great. So, oh, this is, you can kind of see it's onion skin. Doesn't work really great. More onion skins, more dyed papers. I always keep a stack nearby of sort of what I call failed experiments that to use again, to redo, remake, add on to. So these were some splattered prints that I didn't really care for, but I kind of like with the extra bit on there. Notebook, printed graph papers. This was an old notebook paper that I dyed, and then I was using as my sort of pickup strips on the sides. And that picks up really well, but it kind of gets mushy and falls apart. So, those are just some examples of experiments. None of these were really meant to be anything particularly amazing, just experimenting with what works. Because I have lots of papers that I thought I would see if I could get some good prints off them. So some really good test sessions, and oh man, that looks like a geode or something. And I will continue experimenting and reporting back on my results, and I will share all that with you. So I hope you get to play with some Suminagashi. I highly recommend it. Whether you have fancy papers or not, it's so easy. Start with basic black Sumi ink, a pad of sketch paper, and a drop of soap in some water, and a baking dish, and you're good to go. Try it. You'll love it.